out of jealousy. It's all that, you know, and they were really, you know,
Yeah.
So
You can, when you encounter people like that, I often do, think of any country you visited in the world, just about any country, and say, well, how many countries has this country invaded or bombed, or how many people have they killed since World War II? You know, whether it's Denmark or Costa Rica or Argentina, or, well, I guess they did invade the Falklands, so forget that one.
They're all living on a high,
Yeah.
because they feel that we're the only country who has all our freedoms.
So, but the point is, there are consequences. You might lose friends, you might lose a job, you might lose a promotional opportunity, you might be arrested, have to hire a lawyer to get out, pay a fine, you might be clubbed, you might be tear gassed, all kinds of possibilities. Those kinds of intimidations keep most people who oppose war from saying anything. In other words, I believe that it's not considered socially acceptable by most Americans to speak out against a U.S. war. And I think, in fact, you're not reinforced, you're punished if you speak out against war. I wear this Stop the War thing. I wish it had an S on it, but for Stop the Wars. But I wear this in a public supermarket, the airport. Sometimes it'll cause very interesting conversations that will end with the person agreeing, yes, they'll call their congressman or their senator, but sometimes it leads to people yelling at me just because I wear this Stop the War, calling me a traitor. And what if one of the troops sees that? Yes, sir?
Oh, when my wife and teenage daughter and I went to Washington to protest the current war, we were at the Capitol grounds, but we were told that we couldn't protest there, that there was a free speech zone several miles away, that
Yes.
we could protest in the free speech zone. And I said, I thought all America was a free speech zone. How did I make this mistake? And so that made him angry, and he told me to get on this bus. And then he walked away, and I didn't get on the bus. The heck with him. But
Yeah. So that kind of intimidation, too, happens frequently. This is some different pictures of a demonstration that takes place in Burnsville, Minnesota, every Tuesday afternoon. And a few people gather on the corner there, and the first act of intimidation was the police would send someone to take pictures of everyone there. Some people on the corner would turn their back because they didn't want to have their picture taken. They weren't sure why their picture was being taken. Some people didn't come back the next Tuesday afternoon. They were intimidated by simply having the police there taking pictures of a small group of 6 or 7 people. You see this small sign here, Hunk for Peace? That's very traditional anti-war signs. Well, after this didn't stop the demonstration from occurring, the police started pulling over every single motorist that honked their horn. And those people had to go to court and pay a fine. Now, since then, the courts of the state have overturned that, but this is the kind of intimidation that took place in a small rural community in Minnesota. The current U.S. culture is a culture of war, not peace. And as I said, since the end of World War II, the U.S. has invaded more than 20 countries. I don't know if you can read all of these countries. Some of them we visited more than once, but there are 23 here. Can you see, do you know the one that's missing? Iraq's there. We did that a couple of times.
Afghanistan?
Now that's there.
It is there.
Haiti?
I'll tell you in a second. War is part of our culture, and change requires that peace be taught and that peace leadership be valued, that peace leadership be documented, recorded, recognized, and honored. And by peace leadership, I mean anything from standing in front of a federal courthouse, holding a sign on the corner, writing your congressperson, writing a letter to the editor, to more aggressive nonviolent activity, such as Noam Chomsky withholding half of his income tax during the Vietnam War. I don't know how he ever got away with that, and I suppose secretly he ended up paying it at one point. But there are a variety of activities. So, to show that our culture continues, this man, who I supported, and is probably the most intelligent person we've had in the office in my lifetime, seemingly a compassionate man, 2 days after his inauguration, he ordered airstrikes on Pakistan.
Who are you talking about?
Obama.
President Obama.
Oh, is that? I
Yeah.
didn't realize.
It's a character of Obama, who now has 3 wars. He's overseeing 3 wars, and this is my political statement. As far as I'm concerned, every death, and there have been tens of thousands of them since January 20th, are on his head. Those 3 wars are his wars, and he didn't need to invade Pakistan after his inauguration. The president who said he would negotiate and talk with people and try other peaceful means before going to war. So our conclusion is that it's time to dedicate a national monument to peace. And the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation was established in 2005, and I'm sure none of you have heard of it before I visited Sarasota a couple months ago. Had anyone heard of it except Dr. Ritt? Yeah, you had heard of it. Well, the reason most haven't is because we're keeping a very low profile. We've set some benchmarks that we must achieve before going public, because people like Rush Limbaugh and others could quickly bring us to a standstill. We don't have lots of volunteers that could respond to emails. We don't have lots of bandwidth on our website that could really take a lot of traffic. We don't have the resources. So we set some benchmarks. One is that we raised our first $1 million. Well, we're way off that benchmark. Another is that we have 1,000 founding members. Founding members are people that have donated $100 to the Peace Memorial Foundation, which is a 501c3, not-for-profit. And we're at less than 50% of that goal. We also have the goal of having 1,000 people listed in the U.S. Peace Registry, and we're only at 10% or less of that goal. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute. The one we're doing are most successful at is the goal of having a founding member from all 50 states. And we're at 35 states right now, which is 70% of our goal. So that's pretty good. Plus we have the District of Columbia and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So we're moving along in that respect. The foundation exists to demonstrate that advocating for peaceful solutions to international problems is an honorable and socially acceptable activity. So the goals, number 1, to recognize U.S. peace leadership. We do that by giving an annual Peace Prize. Second thing is to build a monument, a national monument in Washington, D.C., called the U.S. Peace Memorial, to be a symbol that educates and educates the American population, and especially young people, and recognizes people who oppose war, and demonstrates that the United States has a long history of peace activism. And I'll tell you more about the memorial in a minute. And the third goal is to publish the U.S. Peace Registry, which already exists on the web, and it documents the activity of individuals so that they can become role models, and so that their activities that they engaged in can become guidance for others in future generations. So the recipient of the 2009 Peace Award, Peace Prize, was Cindy Sheehan, and that's in recognition of extraordinary and innovative anti-war activism. And the award was given in December at a demonstration in front of the White House. Second goal is to build the Peace Memorial. And the project will provide information that can be used to educate American youth and others about the nation's rich history of patriotic citizens and leaders that have advocated for peace and peaceful alternatives to war. This is one artist's conception of what it might look like. Here's another artist's conception. We have not settled on the design. We're nowhere near collecting enough money to have a contest among architects to come up with the design. But so many people asked what it might look like, so we went ahead and asked a couple artists that were founding members to go ahead and draw something up. So one way that we're recognizing peace leadership and trying to demonstrate our long history is by including quotations from famous Americans engraved on the memorial. Our goal